In previous videos, I discussed what Eunomia was, and I gave the example of Sparta or the Lycurgus system of Eunomia. In this video, I want to concentrate more on Solon's idea of Eunomia in Athens. So what is the right way according to Solon? The most important aspect of the right way is that it is a perpetual evolution. The right way to you, for example, from the first hydrogen atom as it's complex through fusion, etc., to Luca, last universal common ancestor, through the fish, through reptiles, whatever the hell it was, to hominids and to you, is an unbroken line. That line is perpetual evolution. There are no revolutionary elements in it. So please bear that in mind. That's an extremely important thing, because there are lots of boneheads, especially now, who constantly go on about evolution as a sexy thing. We need more revolution, we need this, we need that. But it's because they are idiots. They don't really think. They don't look at things and understand them before they talk about it. So the unbroken path to you or to me or any living organism, the alienated gravity path, is entirely evolutionary. It is not a revolution. What is the difference between the two paths? Revolution seems to be popular, as I said, with boneheads, but it almost always fails. There is no reason to believe that it will be successful. Why is that? Well, the principle is this, and it's quite a simple process, simple principle, but one that it looks like it eludes most people. So the basic difference between evolution and revolution is this: if you cannot repair a clutch in your car, then don't dismantle the car. If you're not smart enough, there's the clutch. If you can't take the pressure plate and the other plate, I forget, and repair your clutch in your car, then don't take it apart to start again in the hope that somehow you're going to end up with a better car. That is what a revolution is. This is an evolution. Making small changes, correcting small mistakes, and making things better, rather than dismantling everything in the hope that something better will come along. And of course, the path to you and me does not include this. We were never dismantled. If the world was dismantled, then they gave a chance to our line to continue. But that's the revolution is not internal, it's an external revolution. So revolution is about power. Evolution is about complexity, the retaining of complexity, which is extremely important in a society or in any event, because if you lose it, there is no guarantee you are ever going to come back. For example, if today the Western civilization failed and most of us, in the West and in the developed world died, there is no guarantee that the Africans or the Asians or the South Americans, the ones that live in jungles and primitive lives, would ever invent the light bulb again. That it's silly to assume that they might. So the only political system that we actually understand is the alpha dog system, and this, from now on, I'll try and explain this more and more. But for now, this is the one you actually understand. This is the one that's current in the world. It has been since Solon's Athens. The prime minister here, or the king, or some idiot that has to sit in a chair and rule over us, is the alpha dog system of politics. We will discuss this later under Zoon Politikon, Aristotle's concept, and it's an extremely important one, actually, of all the things that Aristotle said, and I'm not a big fan, but this particular concept, I think, is really important that we should understand. If you don't understand this, I don't believe that you can understand political systems. So nothing will convince you more about the toxicity and the pointlessness of our education system than that. If you don't understand this, and you don't understand the difference between evolution and revolution, then I'm afraid, what's the point of the education system? What is it trying to make you? You live in a state, you live in a society. If you're not prepared to live in that state eunomically, then what the hell are you? So there is another way than this alpha dog system, and that is Solon's way, which was the changes he implemented in Athens. So what is Solon's Eunomia? The most important aspect and the difference between Solon's Eunomia and Lycurgus's Eunomia, the Spartan one, which I explained in the last video, is that Solon's Eunomia is universal. You will see it. You may not think it, because it was specific to the Athenian organism or the Athenian state, but believe it or not, the principle actually is universal. I can prove it to you. So it's not elitist. It does not put a label on itself and exclude everyone else, because by definition, because it's the right order of things, it includes within it all living organisms. So it has no enemy. In that respect, it is actually a fantastic system. If it is implemented properly, then it is very inclusive rather than exclusive and elitist. It is not based on power. Power has no place to play in Solonic Athens. It's based on wisdom. It's based on changing the clutch. Do you know how to change a clutch? If you don't know how to change the clutch, then don't touch the car, please. Stay away, and certainly don't dismantle it, because obviously you're an idiot. So no false virtues. That's all nonsense about good and evil and charity, altruism, socialism, individual glory, all this nonsense, which by the way takes us back to, in a way, to Nietzsche, who realized that all of these false morals have nothing to do with it. Right and wrong are beyond good and evil, because the concept of good and evil is a primitive nonsense. If I go back to the example of the clutch in your car, when the clutch breaks down, is your car evil? Well, of course not. You just need to change the clutch. It's about right and wrong. It has nothing to do with it. So, Solonic reforms, as I'll discuss a little bit of it later, the details are not important. I just want you to get the broad brush understanding of what this was about. Is about the birth of Athenian organism as a whole, and the role everyone must play in it. So, the Solonic way, as I said before, in the Lycurgan system in Sparta, the organism was a psychopath. It absorbs everything for its own sake to maximize its own choices. But in the Solonic Athens is the psychopathic search for symbiosis. Just remember it for now, please. I'll try and explain this later, because it is important. We can't get away from Nietzsche, because you still have to be a psychopath regardless of where you are. You may be a dark psychopath, or you might be a light psychopath, but you still have to be a psychopath, because in dealing with reality and dealing with life, you're going to be faced with choices, and these choices are difficult and not everyone can make them. So, but look at the motive. Here, psychopathy is for the individual maximization of fear and craving, and here is the maximization of search for symbiotic congregations. So this is a totally different system that Solon has come up with. Excuse me. Once you see what I'm talking about, if of course I'm right, I mean, I may be an idiot, I'm making this up, but if you can see it, what I see, you can't unsee it. Once you've seen it, what the organism is, you cannot unsee it. And then things become a lot easier to understand. So we discussed humanity, the new organism. The Athenian organism is just a mini version of it. So it's the birth of that organism. And if it has grown worldwide, then believe it or not, it's that Athenian organism that has grown. The principles that were applied to Athens is what has grown, which was science, which was rational thinking, the right order of things, which we mainly applied to our technology, but not to our humanity. So here's the thing. Your cells are to you what you are to your state. Please think about this for a moment. So here's your cell with the mitochondria, etc. Cells congregate to form different organs within your body here, and your organs then congregate to form you. Any discussion about who's in charge in this event here, from the cell to organs to Darwin, or who is the boss and who's important, is completely ridiculous. You can see it, because this is not based on power. This is based on eunomic congregation or symbiosis. So no one is in charge here, yet everyone is in charge, if you see what I mean. Later on, I'll discuss this a bit more detail within the, when we discuss demosophy, as opposed to democracy, and what that really means. But for now, I think you can see what I mean. Because it's not power-based, any concept of who's in charge and who should be in charge is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. So Solon comes up with a very unique approach. Now, most people believe that democracy evolved from the Solonic time, and they are absolutely right. But I wouldn't call it evolved. I would say deteriorated, because by the time Pericles comes along, and you'll see in a minute what I mean, is that the system that Solon had introduced, which I would call demosophy, not democracy, is the firstborn of the Athenian conjoined twins, is demosophy, meaning collective wisdom for collective good. And that's very important because it has nothing to do with power, whether it's democracy has everything to do with power. And it's an illusion anyway because it's impossible. How do you make everybody powerful? And the answer is you can't. So we're lying to ourselves. But democracy is collective wisdom for collective good, which is what Solon came up with. So what did he really introduce? What he introduced was a voluntary top-down depressurization of the Athenian system. When Solon came to power, Athens looked as if it was on the verge of a revolution. People had sold themselves through debt into slavery, Athenian citizens, and there was a big problem. Land had been confiscated by some of the rich. There was some very rich people who lived opulent lifestyles, and there were lots of poor people, and the whole system of Athens looked as if it was going to break apart, and it wasn't working. And it's Solon who comes along, and he himself is from a very powerful family. So we're not talking about some idiot homeless person who goes and gets other homeless people to come together and go for a revolution, which is what the boneheads love, this romantic idea. This is a totally different thing. I really cannot think of many, many instances in history where this form of depressurization of a system systematically by those who are in power, meaning voluntarily stepping down, taking away their own power so that they can give more to other people because they realize that the choices they are making are the wrong choices. They are the powerful, they are the ones that are making choices to go, but they realize that they must be making the wrong choices because the Athenian organism is dying. It's very sick. So this is very important, so please bear this in mind. There are a couple of other ones, and we'll discuss these later when we talk about the political systems. I can only really think about Ataturk in Turkey after the First World War, and maybe to a small extent in Britain after the Second World War, which very quickly again broke apart into what is democracy now, this nonsense of idiots who all think they're equals and everybody's vying for attention. But this is a totally different system. This has nothing to do with power. In fact, it's the opposite. Can you see? The actual powerful are depressurizing themselves. They're voluntarily letting go. So the realization of a common objective, not the pursuit of winning, not the pursuit of maximization, or becoming billionaires and constantly looking at the pictures to see who is the latest, most richest person on the planet, and then sulking that you're not anymore. That kind of moronic behavior. This is the realization of a common objective. That the birth of what I would call the true birth of the Athenian organism at this point. So it's basically people realizing that the choices they're making are wrong. He does not go and talk to homeless people or the slaves or the poor of Athenians. He goes and talks to people just like him, the powerful Athenians, and convinces them that they're wrong in what they're doing. Just take a moment and just wallow in the magnificence of this kind of thinking. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how you could get the powerful to voluntarily step down. Because the opposite of it is a nonsense revolution. People who have no power, when they get it, they turn into, foxes in hen houses. There is nothing worse than an idiot who has never had power to get power. We believe that when we get power, of course, we understand how the poor feel, and we will work for the poor. It is nonsense, because they then get the bloodlust of what they had lost, what they never had. And when they have it, they will torment their own kind much worse than people who've had power for a long time and who have become, if you like, even through false morals, benevolent and charitable, if you like. But these idiots who take power from nowhere, I mean, just look at the history of revolutions, you find that they are the most brutal of all people, the people who've never had power. So the evolution, as I said before, is a stepwise, gradual, not explosive. It doesn't happen in one big bang, because too many changes could almost always are going to make the organism less suitable to this environment, because remember, it's already suitable to its environment. So we need small changes to make it better, rather than big changes that might make it completely worse. So people who have power in this situation do not want to relinquish it. No one does, especially if you had power and you've used that power because you're afraid that your slaves hate you, and if they get power, they're going to want revenge. So nobody wants to relinquish power. People who have never had power cannot handle it. And that is a key point, because they will just get bloodlust. Mr. Fox here will eat all of the chickens. He doesn't give a damn about anything else, because remember, he really just wants to be like his masters. All slaves want to be like their masters. If you believe that they somehow are so ethically advanced that they want to bring peace and justice to the world, I'm afraid you're living in cloud cuckoo land. That's not ever. That does not happen. Power begets more power. Power is absolutely corrupting. We've known this for a very long time. So anyway, what were the key Solonic reforms? He introduced freedom from slavery. He released all of the Athenian citizens from slavery, and made them gradually, not immediately, get involved in the saying of what happened to them, or what Athens should be doing. This is a very, very gradual process. Because remember, if you're a slave and you've just been released from slavery, you're going to be extremely happy. So that one step is going to make you very motivated, and you can see that there is a system coming through that is very good for you. And it doesn't make the people who have released you feel too paranoid, because you don't have now oodles of power so that you can do whatever you like to them. It's not about revenge. It's about gradual depressurization. Land was redistributed, but in a logical way, not immediately stripping all of the rich, taking them to the guillotine and chopping their heads off. Far from it. Most of them kept their, most of their lands, but they gave in enough to start this new process, because remember, this is the birth of a new organism, the Athenian organism. It's going to need work, it's going to need nurturing. You can't just take the top off the pressure cooker, you're going to get an explosion. Agricultural reforms for Athens, not for profit. So in other words, what does Athens as an organism need to make sure that we have a diverse agricultural system, rather than rich people producing only what they can sell abroad and making loads of money out of it, and everybody else can die of starvation. I mean, Africa and the East is a classic example of the colonial agricultural policies, where people made rubber and coffee and chocolate to keep everybody else happy, and they all died of hunger. So the start of a collective thinking. And that's important, because Solon introduces this concept about the Athenian organism, in which the poor and the rich are now thinking about what is good for Athens, because they realize that what is good for Athens is ultimately good for them. Okay, the rich can lose a little bit and the poor can gain a little bit, but ultimately it's about balance. It's not about one extreme going to another extreme, which would be a revolution. So the birth of the organism, or the Athenian organism, is what Solon is about. Most experts misunderstand Athenian glory, in my view. I may be wrong, but you can judge for yourself. If we look at where Athens begins, and I would consider Solon to be the point at which we should start, is when Solon introduced his reforms, and the birth of the Athenian organism came about around the 6th century BC. Athens was probably nothing more than just a glorified village. There wouldn't have been much in there. It was, just mainly agricultural, and there may have been an acropolis, but it was nothing serious. It probably just some set of walls to protect them. But more importantly, one of the key things actually that again makes Solon incredible as a human being is that once he introduced his reforms and made the laws, he left Athens. He didn't want to be its king. He didn't want to be his leader forever and ever. He actually understood that if his reforms had any merit, then the people would accept them voluntarily. He wouldn't have to sell it to them. I cannot describe. Every time I think about this guy, the hair at the back of my head stands. I mean, this is incredible. When you compare it to the zombies we have as leaders now, these jackals that can never be satiated, and hoarding everything that they possibly can, and using every single method to make sure that they remain in power, brain dead, falling asleep while they talk, these octogenarians. It's disgusting. It's amazing when you think that almost 2,500 years ago we had human beings of this caliber, and where have we got to? I mean, what is the point of this education system if we have regressed from this human being to the idiots we have today as our leaders? So Solonic Athens was nothing more than a village. Periclean Athens, on the other hand, was a metropolis. By this time you have the Acropolis, you have Phidias doing all of his wonderful marble statues and so on. The Parthenon has been erected, and Athens is is full of imports from all over the world, or the empire, because by this time Athens had become an empire. It had been infected by the Persian Empire, and it had gone from the Solonic demosophy to democracy. This is a full-fledged democracy at the time of Pericles, and a lot of people, the experts especially, when they talk about Athens, they talk about Pericles and the Periclean Athens as if this is a good thing, as if this is the zenith of the Athenian, as an experiment, if you like. I completely disagree with this. This, to me, is the dying few breaths of Athens. If you look, I can express this better in this next slide. If you look at the evidence of what happens, you have to understand by social reaction timing, meaning an idea that you introduce, a policy that you introduce, does not have an instantaneous effect in a state. It may take a long time, it may take a generation or even 2 generations. So if you plot the rise of Athens in terms of its wealth, and in terms of its well-being, in terms of its power, in terms of its glory, etc., etc., this, I believe, is a kind of a curve that you would see. Solon is at the bottom of this curve right here, and Pericles is right at the top of this curve here. But look at what happens after Solon dies. Athens grows. Whatever he introduces as a system is the thing that makes Athens great. Whatever this idiot is applying, and by the way, Pericles, to me, if you what little I know of him, it sounds more like Donald Trump kind of a thing. He's more of a megalomaniac, a populist kind of a guy, and this is the height of Athenian democracy. That I would agree with, and I'd like you to please pay attention, because you think this is a good thing. You're very wrong. This thing cannot withstand even the most rudimentary of re-examinations. Democracy is a nonsense. I don't understand why anybody even thinks about it as a good thing. What they misunderstand is demosophy. Where there are any real benefits to humankind from the way we congregate ourselves democratically, is because of demosophy, not because of democracy. This is a total waste of time. And if you look at what happens to Athens after Pericles, it literally fell over, fell off the cliff, and it burnt itself to oblivion. So, democracy, he would consider to be revenge of the Chandala. Chandala were the untouchables. And again, please see some of the other videos I made before if you don't know what that term means. These are the untouchable caste of the Indians, the lowest of the low, who basically have absolutely no power, and they all do all the dirty work. But obviously, they're human beings, and they would like to have power. They want more power, more recognition, more everything. And they, he understood that they are the ones that always keep pushing equality and morals, because for them, equality is a very, very long way of getting an enormous amount of power free of charge by using guilt and false morals. And this applies to all societies. All of the dysfunctional, pointless people who have no real talent, or who have no real contribution that they can make to society that's worthy of attention, will use these kind of false morals to get attention from society. And true democracy has never really existed until now. I'll discuss this later to see, if you agree with me, simply because in previous years and even up to now, we've used the voting system as an illusion of power, where people are voting for either one or the other predator to lead them. Party politics is basically that. This is an illusion that you're making changes, but you're not. You're actually giving power to one or the other idiot and waiting for 4 years to see what happens. And even when you change them, nothing changes. You just change the idiot, but the policies stay the same. So it has never existed until now. Why? Because social media, this is the key thing. This is the bloody thing that opened the gates to the Chandala, where everybody now has access to the public platform, where everybody can get up on the public platform, and regardless of them having any sagacity or any reason for getting attention, will get attention or have the opportunity to get attention, which is what true equality is. The opportunity to get attention. And of course, the freakier, the more stupid, the more frightening, or the more but titillating is what gets attention. So basically, democracy, true democracy, has not existed until now, where now we have everybody can contribute, if you like, and then we'll see what that is. So power in a society means getting attention. The only reason people have attention from other people is because they have power, some kind of a power. Either you contributing something positive people want, or you're very beautiful or very sexy or whatever the hell it is, or you're a doctor or you're a nurse or something that people want from you. But when you don't have power, what do? You become a chandala. You use false morals. You use equality. You use all kind of gender this and gender that. Any nonsense that sounds fluffy. The woke mentality is nothing but revenge of the chandala, in which people who have absolutely no right for attention because they make no contribution, they have nothing to contribute, are constantly demanding and, of course, receiving a lot of attention. If you're a guy who dresses up as a woman and goes and asks for a toilet and it has hundreds of people, and you go to a government place where they debate your request, I mean, imagine how much attention you're getting from absolutely no reason at all. So the public, all of the public, which is the will to power, again, Nietzsche's philosophy, it wants power and is fighting for it. And this has only been possible because of social media. Otherwise, idiots would have been walking around and people would just cross the road and forget about them. But now you can't escape from them. They're everywhere. So the quest has nothing to do with the state or the well-being of the state as an organism. It is about winning and cancer. So true democracy is a fundamental failure in every level, because when everybody wants power, this is what happens. You get woke. You get the revenge of Chandala. So democracy is the stupid and dangerous game. It's complete nonsense, because winning is the main goal. Everybody wants to have power. Everybody wants to win. And of course, that we've come to a place where this should be very obvious to you that we don't talk about policies anymore. We just basically pick a side, whether it's a party or we have somebody that we follow on social media, regardless of who they are. Maybe they have big tits or a big ass or whatever the hell it is, and we want them to win, and we'll back them up, and whatever they say is right. We want our team to win. This has nothing to do with anything else. This is entirely a democratic process, because democracy is about power. Demosophy is about wisdom, which is Solonic. It's a totally different thing. So the desecration of the public platform is the biggest crime against humanity, and it is thanks to a bunch of spotty incels living in, they started their lives in some cellar somewhere, at their granny's cellar, but now, of course, they probably own islands and are billionaires. But these morons single-handedly changed the world into this abyss by making excuses that, they're making the world a better place because people can communicate. Communication is just noise, and this is destroying everything. So, as you can see, true democracy, which is what social media has brought, I will agree to that, is basically revenge of the Chandala, which is going mad. So equality of rights now seems to mean equality of sagacity. Let me explain this as to see how insane this whole idea is. Here's a patient in a hospital. This is a surgeon, and in the hospital there are other functions. We have a plumber. We have a baker, in the canteen who makes food, or the chef. We have the visitors who have come in to see the patient, and we have the cleaning lady. Why would we want in the hospital for every one of these guys here to be equal? Which moron would suggest that we should ask the plumber what we should do to this patient? Do we give him an enema with this apparatus here? Well, the answer is so simple and straightforward that you wouldn't. I mean, obviously he has to be in charge because he knows, he's been trained to do so. Most of us would not argue about this, and yet when it comes to our state, we seem to completely forget about this, and everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to make a contribution, because remember, the whole process of democracy is about equality. Everyone has a vote. How can everyone has a vote? I mean, think about this. Democracy, another failure of democracy, is about amateurism. Every idiot can be a leader, and we say that as if it's a good thing. I mean, how would you like it if every idiot could be a doctor? We put this guy through 7 years of training before we allow him to prescribe an aspirin. Yet all the other morons can go around making changes to the state, which could kill millions of people. So democracy is a nonsense. But we'll see that in a great deal of detail later. So understanding equality, you have to understand what equality means in the two different concepts. In power politics, it means attention, segregation, groupism, and winning. That's what it means, because it always boils down to a single person. You want power, and if you can't get power, you'll group with somebody that kind of you can get a bit more power because you just want a little bit more all the time, and ultimately it will break apart into different groups. It can never be a single group, because then that would be, through wisdom. So in wisdom politics, it means eligibility. That is true equality. In fact, that is the true definition of equality in universal terms. Even if you're a moronic alien, you will understand that that is the right way to be equal. In other words, you have equality, but are you eligible? Everyone can be a tennis player, but I can be a tennis player if I want to, but I'm not going to win Wimbledon because I'm an idiot. I'm not a proper tennis player, so I'm not a surgeon, etc. So eligibility is true freedom and equality. So this we'll discuss later under Demosophy and Socrates, because Socrates is the greatest political leader ever for a demosophic state. A lot of people they don't think that he was a political figure or that he was a statesman. That is nonsense. He was a statesman because he died for his beliefs. He died for his political action in Athens, and I'll come to that in a bit more detail later. You'll see quite clearly that he's not this thing called just a philosopher, which is today's interpretation of an intellectual masturbator just sitting in a corner talking nonsense, feeling good about himself, that he's very clever. This is a different animal, and that's why we need to, in previous videos I tried to distinguish real philosophy from other nonsense. So in power politics, everyone is equal, because you have to give power to everybody. Everybody has a vote. In a democracy, in a demosophy, you wouldn't, because that if you don't know what you're voting for or what the right answer is, what the hell are you voting for? So in wisdom politics, no one is. But more importantly, no one wants to be equal, because they understand that truths matter. They understand that eligibility is what matters. Like in a hospital, nobody that is even remotely intelligent would go to a hospital and advocate that everybody should be given an equal vote. So this is the big difference. So in a state, there are no places for amateur heart surgeons, just in the same way that there are no places for amateur morons who basically just have a big ego and think they can lead. So please note what philosophy was actually invented for. If you've just followed this video so far, then this is what a real philosopher is. Socrates was the real thing, and this is what philosophy means. The tool for everyday life. The critical thinking, the way you analyze, the way you look at things, and the way you make decisions, because philosophy is there for you to make better decisions, the right decision. It was not invented to be an intellectual masturbation tool, a tool for human life, which is what that was, and this is what it was. So if anybody else tells you about philosophy, then please remember this, make up your own mind. You don't have to take my word for it, but still, this is what a real philosopher was supposed to be. A state is as effective as the quality of choices it makes. Idiots make idiotic choices, so idiots should not be allowed to make choices. We murder people, and remember, he was murdered by the Athenian Democrats, these wise people of the entire, more or less, a large portion of the Athenian population of the time. They condemned him to death, and we don't condemn to death intellectual masturbators. We don't even know their names. I mean, can you name a modern philosopher? Probably not, because these idiots are just sitting somewhere talking nonsense. They're not involved in making the world a better place and talking about and teaching people about how to be a critical thinker, how to make the right choices. They're just too busy contemplating some meaningless subject. So we know what woke is. Woke is the revenge of Chandala, or the revenge of the people who have absolutely no right for attention, but who want it and have an equal right, they believe, to it. Woke are the people who cancelled Socrates. So the Athenian woke are the people who cancelled Socrates. And at the time, there was endless litigation, everybody suing everybody, because the law had become a wonderful tool for people's ego massaging, endless titillation, humiliation, and bullying, basically. The death of Socrates is basically just that. And if you look around yourself and where the Western civilization is now, where would you put it? I mean, if you look at the woke, if you look at the cancel culture, if we look at the fact that we can't wait to humiliate people and we love titillation, we don't want anymore to think. In fact, we've even going to come up with AI to do the thinking for us so that we can just sit there and masturbate, I guess. So what is the problem? What is the solution to this particular problem? In a nutshell, we'll discuss this a lot later with the, the political situation in socionomy. Is it laws? I mean, as far as Socrates is concerned, is it equality? Do we need more equality? We seem to be, love these words. Is it tolerance? Because this is another very beautiful word that everybody's going around. We need to be more tolerant. We need to just let everybody do whatever the hell they want. Is it love? The most overused, pointless word in the English language. What the hell does that mean? We need love. We need love. Is it appeasement? Should we just close our eyes to a certain bunch of people in our society and let them do whatever they want because they have a claim that they did things in their country in a different way? And by the way, their country is a rat hole, and that's why they came here, kind of thing. So you have to be, where is the problem? And as far as Socrates is concerned, all of our problems have the same solution: education, education, education. Because if we don't know what right is, if we cannot critically think for ourselves, we're just going to be a bunch of idiots, basically monkeys who've been accelerated with technology. We basically are that. And what he's saying is, for us to live a human life, then we need education. And I don't mean this nonsense that we teach at Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard and all this, where we produce elite monkeys who have the most power and who cause the most damage. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an education system that is just as obsessed about humanity as it is about technology. So there is a reason, and again we'll discuss this later, why all three of these guys, El Magnifico himself, Socrates, Plato and Aristotle, the three of the most important philosophers in Western civilization, all vehemently hated democracy as a process, and they actually lived through it. So how have we forgotten? Why has the education system forgotten it? Why are we still talking about democracy as if it's a good thing without understanding it? Why have we not taught our children what true democracy or demosophy is? What's the difference? Why do we not know what power versus wisdom is? Popularity versus compulsion, equality versus eligibility, amateurs versus professional, immunity versus accountability. If you think about it, all of these sides here are what democracy supports. And this is where the demosophy is. And this is a key point here. Why do politicians have immunity? Regardless of what they do and the crimes they commit against humanity, they still retire with their millions. And there is no punishment of any kind. There are no consequences. Can you imagine the insanity of a life in which the person who makes choices can make choices without consequence? It corrupts the logic of the universe. It completely destroys it. It is the most idiotic thing that you could possibly think of, and yet we do it. Citizenship not given. By the way, this at the moment, if I live in Britain, so if you asked me what does British citizenship mean to you, I would say it's just toilet paper. We give it to every arsehole. Any arsehole can have British citizenship. He can be a criminal, he can be a moron, a rapist, anybody from anywhere that comes in. He can't speak English, he doesn't understand the culture, he doesn't know anything about anything, but he can still be exactly the same citizen as somebody who has lived and dedicated his life to improving this country and serving this country through either hard work or through education or through everything else. It is not a medal of honor. It is not something that you have to work for, that you have to dedicate your life and earn. It is something that is thrown at you. And the only things that are thrown at you free of charge when you don't have to work at it are meaningless, pointless things. So this citizenship in a democratic state is toilet paper. It doesn't mean anything. Anyway, I hope that kind of cleared some of the points that are said about the Solon's idea of eunomia and what demosophy is. It's a word that I introduced as opposed to democracy because they are totally different things. And what made Athens great was not democracy. This is what killed Athens, democracy. So anyway, this book should have been called Socionomy, book number 4. But as I said, I put this one, Democracy, the Great Athenian Blunder, because I thought it might be more catchy. People might relate to it rather than a technical thing. And my fundamental reason behind all of these videos is our education system. It is horrible. It's completely pointless and toxic. It's teaching us nothing. Anyway, thanks.